Now I'm looking forward to listen to hear the next speaker, Dr. Katja Lasch, the director of the German House of Research and Innovation and the DAAD, the German Academic Exchange Program, based out of Delhi. So the stage is yours.
Yeah, thanks, Julian, for the nice introduction. And I think you just said it, no? We are the German Center for Research and Innovation, and in innovation, there's of course entrepreneurship. But let me thank you, Julian, Amrita, and Deepak for organizing this wonderful week, which is going on, covering a lot of topics, but also our co-partners in this day, Anandi, but also STEM peers and my colleague Adishri, who are organizing this important day, who is an important, showcases an important part of the whole entrepreneurial system. In 2018, the last coal mine in Germany closed. This marked the end of 150 years of industrialization and economic development. If coal and iron was the fuel of the industrial economy, knowledge is the fuel of today's economy. We are living in a world whose economic growth is driven by knowledge, and the competition for global and talent and research cooperation is one indicator for this development. So research budgets are on the rise worldwide. Germany doubled over the last 20 years its research budget with an increasing share of investments in partnerships and innovative networks. And I think we just heard about these wonderful networks, clusters, industry, academia relations, which are taking place. The new knowledge-based economy has also led to a shift from managed economy dominated by large firms to an entrepreneurial economy in which small enterprises are developing into main drivers for economic growth. So one just have to think about Microsoft, Facebook, Amazon, all these small firms who developed in garages and now are today's world leader in innovation. The Global Entrepreneurship Monitor 2020 stated for 2019 that the startup economy created nearly $3 trillion in value, and that the year saw close to $300 billion in venture capital investments around the world. And the new report is released today, and I'm quite sure we will have even a higher number looking back at 2020. Today, policymakers around the globe counting on entrepreneurship and startups to provide the engine of economic growth. And Anandi just tackled all the programs which are placed, which evolved in the pandemic, but also not just in the pandemic, also in the years before. A major source of entrepreneurial innovation is the knowledge developed in research institutions and research labs. Bringing the research results from the lab to the market is imperative of today's, or as formulated in the high-tech strategy of Germany 2025, and you can read there, the aim is for relevant knowledge to be widely applied and innovative products and businesses ideas to emerge quickly from cutting edge to research. So we have here cutting edge research and quickly transforming products and businesses into idea. This quotation stands for numerous activities of governments worldwide who foster transfer initiatives and try to interlink science and research with entrepreneurship. The Science Day at the Indo-German Startup Week is dedicated to this specific topic, and today we'll discuss about science-based startups. But what we mean when we talk about academic and science-based entrepreneurship, who and which activities are we actually addressing? Academic entrepreneurship addresses mechanisms by which academic research can be transferred to markets. Let me give you some examples such as patenting, licensing, academic spin-offs, collaborative research, but also contractual research. To sum it up, activities that are directed towards the commercialization of scientific findings. From this bundle or bunch of activities, we are focused today on academic spin-offs. These are new ventures initiated within a university setting or setting of a research institution. They are based on technology derived from university or non-university research. This also includes, of course, deep tech startups. Academic spin-offs play an important role in innovation ecosystem as they create jobs, generate direct economic impact, and promote technological development. And just to give you a number, a recent study in Berlin has shown that the academic spin-offs alone created more than 10,000 jobs over the last year. And in 2020, 19% of the startups in India leveraged deep tech to build solutions. And I think that's quite important to remark for India, which is known in Germany as a hotspot for frugal innovation. No, it is not any longer. There's going a lot on in science-based startups and in technology development. In 2019, the Global Entrepreneurial Economy Report, which I just cited, studied over 70 entrepreneurial ecosystems and showed that they created more than $4 billion in revenues. I found astonishing that the report identified and studied 48 more ecosystems than the year before. So the number of entrepreneurial ecosystem is on the rise, and we witness a diversification. Or with the words of Sam Altman, instead of one new center or 2 new centers, there will be 30, and there will be clusters in different places that don't quite get the density of the Bay Area, which knows everybody, but get beyond critical mass. Amongst the top 30 global entrepreneurial ecosystem, we find Delhi and Bangalore, but also Munich and Berlin. So 2 from India and from Germany. And India continues to be the world's 3rd largest eco-startup system. If one compares the openness of research institutions and universities towards entrepreneurship and startups 20 years ago with today's development, one has to recognize a major shift which has been taking place. German universities have seen themselves for a long time in the tradition of Humboldt as an institution of teaching and research. Entrepreneurship and transfer activities have been initially interpreted as an additional mission and clustered with other activities in the so-called 3rd mission of universities. This course has changed over the last years, also thanks to dedicated funding schemes by the German government. The High-Tech Gründerfonds, a public venture investor, has today about 880 million under management, which are invested in high-potential high-tech startups. And the institutional network of the Exist funding scheme, who funds startups but also incubators, has a network of today 212 incubators and innovation centers, a public funded research institution universities. So one can see that science-based startup is a real driving force in the German ecosystem. And the Technical University Munich is calling itself today the Entrepreneurial University, and even institutions who are focusing on fundamental or basic research like the Max Planck Society are running a transfer office and innovation centers. But nevertheless, there's a lot of work ahead to contribute to a stronger startup and exploration culture in research and science in Germany. But also the Indian startup ecosystem in higher education and research has been changing over the last 20 years. Startup activities were at the beginning of the millennium still limited to a few higher education and research institutions, a handful, I even would say. Following the recession of 2008, the government of India started pushing the startup ecosystem and funded incubators directly at higher education institutions. And today, through the Atal Innovation Mission, more than 60 innovation centers at Indian universities have been established, and numerous funding schemes, and Anandi just mentioned also a couple of them, such as the BIREC seed funding schemes, are available. And as I mentioned, it's not longer frugal innovation, which the Indian startup system is known for. We have more than 2,600 startups who are active in deep tech solutions and raised more than $450 million in venture capital last year. So even if one thinks immediately at the US and the Silicon Valley while they're talking about startups and entrepreneurships, relevant deep tech ventures and science-based startups hubs evolving worldwide and also in India and Germany. And by the way, the global report I just stated sees Mumbai as the next location who will enter the top 30 ecosystem worldwide. Let's have a look at internationalization, which we are talking also today, as GINSEP is a platform who connects Germany and India. Internationalization means to broaden your horizons and can be key for success. We know in research and innovation that international cooperation is an imperative. So for researchers and scientists, it's essential not just to exchange ideas within their discipline in their own countries. Interdisciplinary and international exchange contributes to the advancement of knowledge, and from research, we know that the global challenges cannot be solved on a national level. And you will not find a researcher, a scientist who has made a career in the research system without international experience. And even as startup founders tend to focus at the beginning of their journey on local and regional markets, and early international outlook, for instance, in the direction of Germany and India, can be helpful for personal, but also for business development. And when we talk about the internationalization of academic startups, we very often focus on exploring and upscaling new markets. But there are a lot of different models for international cooperation. So let me name some examples so to showcase how to go international probably with your science-based startup. So you could head for Germany for studies and maybe you find a partner there, a startup founder, just as the 4 Pilots project in Jena and BioWeek, which is also in this week I saw, has done. So Indians who founded their startups in Germany. German students have been inspired by a stay in India and founded a company in Germany with the products focusing on sustainable packaging, which today produced in India. The company is called Arecapac. We have seen the Germany-based startup Plantix developing their business in India with an app for plant recognition and an attached system for distribution of fertilizers. Study and research in Germany and take your knowledge back is also one way to do it. So there is the Alpha startup founded by a postdoc who did his postdoc in Germany. Or maybe you find a partner, you want to partner up with a startup abroad, just as the German startup Paraxen did, who partnered with Cube AI in Bangalore and who is co-developing and even an equity partner in this startup. So there is a lot of possibility. And if you're at your very early stage in your startup journey, there's also other mechanisms to begin with. So visit such platforms as the GINSA platform, but also the German Center for Research and Innovation, who is, for instance, organizing every year the Falling Walls conference, who gives you the opportunity to connect to Germany. As going international can be challenging in the Indo-German context, there are different support mechanisms funded by the German government, as successful international networking means a direct competitive advantage for the country. So the federal government has been actively shaping the internationalization of its higher education and research system with scholarship and projects funding, but is also now up to internationalize the incubators at universities and also offering opportunities for startups. We have at the moment 485 corporations on a university level. We have multiple funding schemes available, and more than 10 German higher education and research institutions are present in India under the umbrella of the German Center for Research Innovation. Besides these mechanisms, incubator and science-based startups can also take advantage of specific support schemes. Currently, the German government, for instance, decided to foster incubators who are developing now new international programs. So selected incubators receive funding to develop mechanisms to connect internationally and to attract international founders and to facilitate networks. One example is the International Entrepreneurship Summer Academy by the University of Braunschweig. And I just learned from the organizers, they had a lot of Indian participants. So I'm glad that all our Indian friends here in India and the startup founders took place or took up the places which were offered to India. The German accelerator button, last but not least, is facilitating market access for German startups, whereas GINSA supports German and Indian startups to gain access to the systems. And we as Center for Research and Innovation are focusing on the activities on science-based entrepreneurship in startups, not just for already made startups. We're also looking to interlink science entrepreneurs at an early stage globally, but we are also a gateway for entrepreneurs and science startups in India and Germany who want to interlink and interconnect. We are catering to institutional cooperation, and we have a nice event in December. So maybe if incubators are here in the audience, we will interconnect with interlinked incubators at early beginning of December. So what does it take to take a research idea from the lab to the market? And what does turn a researcher into a successful science entrepreneur in Germany and India? If one discusses these activities, support mechanisms, and challenges, one has to look at 3 levels, and Anandi nicely framed the systematic level. So the systematic level addressing framework conditions set of an international or regional level, including questions on national IPR and the accessibility and availability of public funding schemes. With regard to the international outlook, it's important to see if internationalization is approached strategically on a governmental level and how or which are the instruments offered. The second outlook one has to have, and we will do this a bit later in the fireside chat, is the organizational level. The organizational level addresses the university and research institutions. Questions to be raised are organizational culture, structures for entrepreneurship and innovation at institutions, as well as the availability of support mechanisms for young and senior researchers, such as TTO offices. The international outreach and connection of the institutions and their incubators needs to be discussed when talking about internationalization, and are there international relations already taking place, or how one can open up this space for researchers and for startup founders. Last but not least, it's the individual level, and I think here in the audience there will be most of the audience is compiled of founders who are on their way or have gone the way. So the individual level addresses entrepreneurial spirit of researchers and scientists. And here is the big question, how to turn a researcher or scientist into a good entrepreneur, and how one also showcases the flexibility of different career paths to researchers and scientists. But it's also important to have a look at startup teams and the mentoring mechanisms. With the dimension of international exchange, questions such as intercultural experiences in studying and living abroad play a significant role here. I think all these three levels we will address in today's Science Day. We will discuss with transfer managers and scientists questions about IPR, support mechanisms, and mentoring. Startup founders will share a bit later their startup story and motivation. And in the masterclass, we give an insight in the support which Fraunhofer Venture is offering and how they successfully turn researchers into scientists and how they do it and what's the way they are showing to scientists. So last but not least, yeah, I wish us a successful day. We are there. Also, my colleagues are there for the networking today. So if you would like to chat a bit later, just step in the networking lounge, which is there. And if you don't reach us today in the networking lounge, we are looking for science-based startups, incubators to connect with us to enlarge our ecosystem. So thanks so much for giving us this opportunity. And Julian, over to you to Berlin.
Thank you very much, Katja. That was really impressive how much information you put in there in these 15 minutes from a general approach about some numbers and activities, and then to the different science-based startup examples, the stories themselves. And then over to all these different programs and mechanisms that are also supporting. And that pretty much sums it up, actually, why it is so important and what is happening on the ground already. So thank you very, very much for that. I find this really, really insightful. And definitely also when it comes to incubators and other startups, science-based startups, that if you want to get in touch with Katja or Adishri, you can always also reach out to us and we connect you further. And the same for the summer school that she mentioned. We are always promoting these opportunities for scientists and for student entrepreneurs also on the GINSEP platform as well.